Good morning, everyone. This is 𝐭𝐡𝐢𝐬 from Document 360. I am the co-organizer of this session. We are thrilled to have you all amongst us for this webinar. The topic for the day is how to create a successful knowledge base. And without taking much of your time, let me take the pleasure of introducing the speaker of the day for you all. Selvaraju Murugesan is a data strategist at kovai.co, a SaaS company. He received his B engineering degree in mechatronics as a gold medalist from Anna University in 2004 and went on to pursue his master's from Lathrop University in Australia and finally received his PhD from the same university in the subject computational mathematics. His interests are in the areas of documentation, technical writing, and data analytics. Selva's presentation today would be followed by a Q&A session, and we encourage all of you to type in your questions on the chat platforms here, and our moderators will collate all of them and hand them over to Selva so that he can answer all of them one after the other. With these few words, I now pass on the screen to Selva to start his presentation. Thank you all, and I hope you guys have a good day. Thank you again. Selva, over to you.
Thank you, Kunal. Welcome, everyone. So it's pretty exciting to be with you all. So let me give you a bit of an overview about the session, what we are planning to do. And it is a good mix of audience right now, and we have about 50% technical writers amongst the audience, which is great. And at least 50% of the audience actually answered saying that they already know what a knowledge base is, so which is also great. So obviously I'll be catering to both of your needs, and let me give you a bit of an overview of what this webinar is going to cover. So first we'll start with what's the purpose of a knowledge base, trying to understand why you build one, and then we'll go into a bit of a components of what a knowledge base would have in terms of what kind of elements and should a knowledge base should have. Then we'll go into the how-to section, which is how to create a knowledge base, which is very important for us. And then we also talk about how do you put the success metrics on determining whether a knowledge base is successfully implemented or not. And then we'll go through a few best practices and then we'll close. All right, let's dive in. So a knowledge base is actually a repository of information. So when you look at the information, this information could be structured in terms of structured data that's coming in, or it could be semi-structured. And in some of the many documentations that I've seen in the knowledge base, most of the informations are unstructured in nature. The most important thing that you need to do is when you build a knowledge base, you need to understand who your customers are for the knowledge base. And the most of the documentation that you do has to meet your customer needs. Yeah, so as I explained before, if you're building a knowledge base, it has to meet your customer needs. And essentially a knowledge base is a collection of information. So as I've given you the definitions, now you need to understand why build one. What's the necessity? What's the value proposition for the business to actually build a knowledge base? So it falls under a few categories or a few themes. And for many of the SaaS companies around the world, the purpose of the knowledge base, why they actually build a knowledge base, is for documenting their product features. So any kind of SaaS product they build, they obviously want to accompany a documentation site along with it. So the product is itself is not complete unless it is accompanied by a product documentation. So that's the main purpose we see in the SaaS industry. That's one of the key areas why we build a knowledge base. And the second traditional motivation for many companies to actually build a knowledge base is how do we capture that corporate knowledge that's lying around inside the organization. So they might produce some internal knowledge repository, which is collection of a lot of information around their organization. So that's the second main reason why people build one. And the rest of the three, customer support, troubleshooting guide, and FAQ, are mostly coming up as a traditional kind of a use cases for a knowledge base. People build knowledge base to provide customer support, because as you build your product and services, obviously customer support is something that most of the customers would want if they are utilizing your product. And documenting what kind of customer support you need to provide for what kind of customer queries is very important in this kind of a digital world. And more importantly, the FAQ section always comes along. If you go to any kind of SaaS product in the market, or any kind of services business, you always see some kind of a frequently asked questions, which is kind of a knowledge base in itself. And the other use case that's also coming up and is emerging in these recent days is this troubleshooting guide. So the way customer service support is providing support to the customer query is actually changing. These days, most of the customers are tech savvy in nature, and what they really want is a first-class service. They really want a red carpet service from the service provider or from the product company. The only way you can actually do that by scale is actually making your customers self-serve. And this troubleshooting guide are the fundamental piece that can provide that kind of a service to your customer. So let me delve into one of the use cases. For example, what does this product documentation side of knowledge base looks like? So for a SaaS company, if they're building products, obviously you need to the products comes with a lot of features. So you need to document all these features in terms of why the company builds such a product feature, what's the purpose of that, and how do you use that product feature, and if something goes wrong with this feature, what is the troubleshooting you have to do? Okay, and if you're really into hardware business and things like that, obviously you need to accompany a lot of features with configuration guides. So that's very, very important. And the product documentation kind of a knowledge base obviously suits for SaaS companies or any kind of product companies which are extremely focused on product development. And obviously this product documentation also comes with some best practices in terms of how do they actually use the product features effectively. And this knowledge base also contains a lot of tutorials so that the customers can actually learn and get themselves familiar with the product they're actually trying to use for meeting their business requirements. The other niche use case I've actually talked about is for a knowledge base is an internal knowledge base repository. Sometimes it's called as a organizational knowledge management. So what it actually collects is, it's actually a collection of corporate information lying across your company. This is essentially important because as a company, as you scale, then there is a need to document all your internal business processes so that everybody is clear on what they need to do in terms of tactical. At the same time, you also need to tell the whole organization where are you taking the organization towards, all your strategic initiative that includes your strategy, business strategies, data strategies, your risk mitigation plans, along with your standard operating procedures need to be shared across the organization. So you need to build an internal knowledge base which holds all the corporate knowledge. In fact, many of the organizations these days actually use internal knowledge repository to document all their strategic programs and projects. These programs could be some kind of a digital transformation program, and these projects could be as simple as a data dashboarding projects, or it could be some kind of a customer journey mapping or design thinking kind of a project. So it is very important for a corporate or an organization to culminate all the knowledges that's lying around the corporate, around the organization. The other reason why people are actually trying to build a knowledge base internally is to actually hold the tribal knowledge, because you need to preserve that institutional memory of an organization. And these days, the knowledge base is actually an asset because it actually holds your institutional memory. So as soon as some employees leave, the corporate knowledge does not evaporate. It actually is contained. In fact, it is just passed on to the next generation. There is a kind of a business continuity for that reason. It's very important to build an internal knowledge base. And the other use case that's coming up is how do we propel innovation using an internal knowledge base? Only by sharing information across the organization, you can actually make that fundamental platform for your organization staff to actually innovate. So the other use case I've talked about is in terms of customer support, FAQs, and troubleshooting guide. This could be as simple as creating a support guide, or if something happens with your product, how do the internal staff actually diagnose that problem? Those are very, very essential to be documented in an internal or a knowledge base, along with tips and hacks and any other kind of tools you can actually use it internally and externally to help your customers diagnose that problem. So these are the three major themes on why we build a knowledge base. And let's come to the exciting part. What is the component? What are the components of a knowledge base? So it falls under 5 themes. So the first theme is your content taxonomy. So in terms of how are you going to structure your content? More importantly, how are you structuring your content in your customer lens? Because as tech-savvy people, we are always motivated to give a lot of technical content. So we'll organize the content in terms of how we view a product as. We'll probably categorize them as features, and probably we'll go to sub-features, and we'll go into configuration guides. But that's not how our customers actually think about the product. So you need to think about, when you're building a knowledge base, how would that content taxonomy looks like in the customer perspective? So it's very important. The second component of a knowledge base is the information discovery. So it's great that you're actually producing a lot of content and you're arranging them in a hierarchical way for your customers to come and use that content. But how are you actually enabling them? Because as your information scales, the information discovery is something fundamental to a knowledge base. And there are ways of enabling this discovery a little bit faster. We'll go into further slides in detail. And the next component is, what kind of tools are you providing to your content creators, your technical writers, to author and publish content? Okay, because you have to equip them with a lot of essential features and some advanced features. So you make it easy for content writers and technical writers to author and publish content. And it also comes with a little bit of, when I say tools for authoring and publishing, obviously the content writers also need tools for collaborations and workflow management and things like that. And that's also a kind of advanced feature for in a knowledge base. Analytics, as we live in this digital age, everybody tend to go about being data driven and analytics led. So analytics is also a fundamental component in knowledge base. The reason why we need analytics is we need to understand from 2 perspectives of a knowledge base. The first is from the content producer's perspective, which is the technical writers. They might be interested in finding out analytics about how many articles they published, how many typos are made, or who published what, is the content published on time, how many edits they have made, and so on. Those are very important from the content producer's perspective, because they're very interested in terms of keeping the technical quality of the content as accurate as possible. From the consumer's perspective, because we are writing content for our customers, so it's very natural for us to actually understand and gather feedback. So analytics plays the role of providing the feedback, getting the feedback from your customers, so you can actually improvise your knowledge-based content. The final component of a knowledge base is your customer collaboration. Of course, everybody wants feedback. That's exactly how we improvise our existing documentation and existing knowledge base. So let me delve into the life cycle, because if you want to understand the component, you need to understand how this component actually fit into the whole life cycle of your knowledge management. So this is a typical cyclic process. So first you start with the plan. So you really want to, usually when you do planning for many organizations, they usually start with some kind of a content strategy. Okay, what is the content I need to support my company in the next 2 years? So it could be product documentation, service documentation, or they might have some kind of a themes, and they usually plan. Then they go about creating some kind of a content. Okay, so based on that strategy or the plan. Then obviously once you create, you need to enhance that. The enhancement of your knowledge base comes with your internal feedbacks, your peer review process. Usually it's called as a workflow management. That's where you enhance. And next is you need to organize that content. Okay, once you create and enhance, then obviously as your content actually scales, you definitely need to organize that content. Once you organize that content, fantastic. Then you need to manage, because sometimes the internal knowledge base you create, you need to ensure that it is properly managed across all the organizations. So you might hold some kind of confidential information that needs to be shared only with a certain group of stakeholders. You can actually do that in the manage phase. Then once you manage, then you obviously share, because sharing is where people come and consume all your content. Then at the end, you tend to archive the content in your knowledge base based on your content or your content management policy of your organization. Then sometimes people also destroy content depending upon their organization need. So this is the whole kind of a life cycle. In simple terms, what it actually does is content creators on the one end, they produce content. Then it goes to a bit of a quality assurance process, which is essentially the workflow management on your peer review process, your internal process, and so on. Then the content gets published. That's when your customers come and consume that product, and then you have analytics to monitor the consumption, and then this feedback goes back to the content creation. So this is the simplified version of that life cycle. And what a knowledge base needs to do is, if you look at all the 4 blocks, the components have to fit into the different blocks. Okay, it has to empower your content creators and content consumers to actually produce content and also consume content effectively. All right, let's delve into the how step. How do we actually create a knowledge base, especially a successful one? So the first element is your content. You need to structure your content optimally. As a technical writer, it's usually we design the content. We are very much fascinated by when somebody gives you a piece of work. Obviously, we need to classify where we actually put that. We design the content in terms of how do we actually categorize that. So we create an optimal taxonomy, bit of a hierarchy of once the content is created, how do we actually categorize that? So it's easy for you and also for the content consumers to actually visualize the content. And I have seen in many of the knowledge bases where you tend to create a content and then it goes into a lot of subcategories. Okay, and probably based on our experience and industry best practices, if you create 2 to 3 subsections or sub layers, that's pretty much optimal. It is because then it makes harder for the customers to actually go and delve into a different topic. They might lose the trail. That's why you have a lot of breadcrumbs. So the breadcrumbs has to be 1 or 2 layers deep. And the other aspect when you try to create the content taxonomy is that you need to create content taxonomy from the customer perspective. Otherwise, you might be thinking that your customer is have good product knowledge as your developers and as yourself, but they're not. So very important to create that content taxonomy from the customer perspective. And then if you feel that many of the content are irrelevant or relevant, you need to group them. I mean, you need to categorize them so that it's easy for your customers to come and navigate your knowledge base. Okay, and in terms of content, depending upon your area, we recommend a 2 to 4 minutes read, probably like 500 to 600 words per article, and ensure that your article has pictures or some kind of animated GIFs. Very important, because a picture is worth 1,000 words, and it is very important to have that kind of a pictorial thing in the article. The reason why I said 2 to 4 minutes read is, in this digital savvy world, nobody wants to read more than 140 characters. Thank you, Tudor. But if you look at it, this technical documentation, it needs to be a little bit wordy because we can't contain everything in 140 characters. So it's very important to keep to that optimal level. Use simple words. When you go as a content writer, if you go for a technical kind of a knowledge transfer session with your developers, especially for product documentation, they might be throwing you a lot of technical jargons at you, but you cannot expect that kind of level of maturity in your customers. So you have to use simple words to articulate the complex concepts in simple words that your customer can actually understand. Very important in a knowledge base content creation. The other missed aspect I've seen is in the content creation is a lot of times when you go and read a piece of article or a documentation content or in a knowledge base, you find that there's a lot of terms that's been used inconsistently. For example, they might be saying users, visitors, customers, clients, stakeholders, and as a reader, you might be wondering, hey, I don't understand these terms. Are these terms the same? Are they different? So it's very important for a technical writer to use the business vocabulary consistently across your knowledge base, so that your customers who come and actually consume the content actually know the meaning of it. In fact, you can actually create a business kind of a glossary and attach to your knowledge base so that the definitions are the same and they're actually used consistently across your knowledge base. All right, so let's delve into the information discovery. So once you create the content, you expect your customers to come and navigate to the topics and then pretty much browse the content, get the value out of the content so that it actually solves their problems or meet their requirements. But if you think about it, as said, knowledge base is a collection of information. As an organization, your information is growing as you scale your product and services. So you can't expect all the customers to come and navigate all the category of the content you've created. That's where the information discovery comes in. You need a powerful search engine, just like Google, that can bring all the relevant content based on certain keyword, which is it is very fast and actually brings the content in real time. When I say real time, as soon as the technical writers make that content available in your knowledge base, it has to be quickly indexed by your search engine so that the information discovery is instantaneous. And it's also important for your knowledge discovery engine to scale as your content actually grows. And based on certain attributes, you can also add relevant tagging, which is very made popular by Gmail. We add tags to our email to organize content. Same thing, you actually add tags to your knowledge base articles so that your search engine can pick up those tags as a keyword and then serve your customer with the relevant article. So the other component is your tools. Tools obviously plays a huge role in your knowledge base because you need a tool to actually manage your content. The content management is very, very important. It's more about managing your categories in terms of your hierarchy of content. That's very important. And then all your article assets, all your knowledge base assets, it could be a screenshot or a video or some kind of a multimedia. You also need to manage that in your knowledge base. So your tool needs to cater to that need. The other aspect of your tool in terms of creating a knowledge base is the editorial capabilities. As a technical writer, you need the freedom to create content. Okay, it has to be platform agnostic if possible. That's where you technical writers love the markdown capabilities of an editor. And as another thing, you also need to link all your internal and external content. So an editor plays a vital role in terms of equipping or empowering your content writers to produce good content in your knowledge base. And as I said before, good content creation from the technical writers is great, but how about we strengthen that and then improve the quality? That's exactly where your workflow management comes in. It can, based on your organizational needs, you can actually set up different process in your internal business process, so you can actually manage this workflow end to end. It could be a peer review process, or it could be an editorial process, and how does this actually steps go in sequence before it gets published into your knowledge base. Very important. And as I said before, your knowledge base can be a public knowledge base, where in terms of SaaS product documentation, your knowledge base is obviously public. But sometimes if it's an internal knowledge base, you need to have private. There is an emerging use case where many of the organization want a mixed kind of a knowledge base, where some part of their knowledge base they want as a public, and rest of them they make it as a private. And that's also an emerging use case. All right. So in terms of tool, the tool also needs to provide. So what in the previous slide I talked about the authoring capabilities. Now you also need kind of a publishing capabilities. How could you publish a good knowledge base that can be attached to your brand, so that it's not a generic kind of a knowledge base, but it is actually branded with your brand guidelines, logos, and color themes and things like that. And obviously, your publishing, your public knowledge base should be SEO friendly, because these days you would expect people would come to your public knowledge base and use your content, but these days people actually use Google to find the content, okay, and then they come to a relevant site. So it's very important for your knowledge base to be getting indexed by popular search engines. And obviously these days you also need some kind of a customizable homepage for your knowledge base, such that you can actually pretty much showcase some of the recent knowledge base article or frequently read things, so that it helps your customers to find the information quickly. And the other aspect is, for the information discovery part, your knowledge base tool should provide a powerful search engine that actually meets the requirement I said before. It has to be fast, responsive, able to use search keywords and bring the relevant content. Okay. The other aspect in the knowledge base is it's very easy to create a knowledge base with a limited content. Could be like 100 articles or 200 articles. But as you go, as you scale, as you grow, obviously you need to manage the article at scale. A simple operation of renaming an article or delete an article could be a tedious task at scale. So this knowledge base tool need to equip you with doing a lot of operations in bulk. And the last step is analytics. You need a lot of usage analytics, customer feedback analytics to help your content creators and content consumers with okay, so let me talk about the collaboration part. So the collaboration part comes for the content writers. So essentially, they need to have workflow management. They also need to have some kind of a discussion around the topic. Okay, with the tool needs to also provide that. And the other aspect is, once the content writers start creating a lot of content, obviously they need to have version control, because they are actually need to manage a lot of versions. And more importantly, they also need some kind of your knowledge base has to be integrated with your team collaboration tools like Slack. Yeah, analytics, I won't go much into a detail because I'll do a demo and then I'll showcase you. But essentially, you need some kind of analytics to understand your content consumers' behavior. Okay, and then you also need to collect a lot of feedback from your content consumers to ensure that it actually meets their expectation, or if they're finding any kind of inaccuracy, you can actually tweak your content quickly. Okay. So let me look at a bit of a demo, and then I'll show you a bit of a demo on how to create a good knowledge base using one of the tools we have. So the example I'm going to talk about is a SaaS product documentation tool. So in this one, we really want to create a product documentation site, okay, whereby I'm more important in terms of documenting my product features, my release notes on when I'm going to release a new features. It could be a bugs or an enhancement. Along with that, I also want to publish a lot of troubleshooting guide, and this will be a self-service portal for my customer. So that's pretty much my use case. All right, let me give you a bit of a demo. All right, so here I am. This is a tool called Document 360, and I'm in the tool, and I've actually created a bit of a project, public-facing knowledge-based site. So let me show you how quickly you can actually create content. So if you look at it from the left side, the content taxonomy comes into play. If you look at it, all the categories are nicely organized, and if I want, I can actually move the category and things like that. And if I want, I can actually create a subcategory if I want. Let me create a subcategory in release notes. If I go here, I have release notes, and then let me create a couple of subcategories. Okay, so this is March. And then I can create another category called April. So let me go into March, and then there's no content. Then I'll create an article saying release notes. So I click create. There you go. You can actually see it actually opens up a markdown editor, which I want. Now I have a lot of content I've actually prepared, and I'm going to copy paste here. So this is the markdown, so it's easy to create. So you can actually see a preview of that on the right hand side. Okay, now I'm going to go and hit publish. So you can actually see here, I actually created a piece of content, and then I published that. Now I click on view site. That's when it actually takes me to the knowledge base site. As I said, I actually configured this as a public site. And here is my release notes. Here is March, and you click on release notes. So whatever content I actually produced is right here. But let's say I want to change this content based on certain things. Let's say this is great. I'm going to add an image. Pick an image from the images. So I actually insert an image, and then you can actually see here, it actually created a different version of article, which is great. That's exactly what I want, because I can actually go back to the older version if I want to. And I hit publish. And I come here and I click refresh. Now you can actually immediately see that image actually got indexed. Okay, it actually is very, very instantaneous in terms of how it actually produces the content. Now, having said that, you can actually set a lot of workflows in terms of how you want that to be. Like, I want this to be a draft, and it goes to a L2 dev review, and I have an editorial review, and it goes to an approval process till it goes to the publish. You can actually implement that workflow inside this knowledge base as well. All right, so let me show you in terms of the home page, which is very important for a knowledge base, because as you can actually see, this is the first home page you land, and you click on the documentation, and it takes you to your knowledge base. And it is also easy to actually configure that home page, because that's the front page where your customers come in. Let me add a few widgets, so you can actually see here. In terms of my home screen, I don't have any widget. Let me add a quick widget. I want most viewed articles. I want recently modified articles. I want recently created articles. And you click save. and I maybe I want to change this theme. This theme doesn't suit me, and let me change my theme. I'm going to activate this theme, and I'm going to hit publish. So there you go. So it's very, very simple. And then you hit refresh. Now your themes are changed. Oh, sorry. Let me activate this theme. So you can actually see here, this is changed. Now it's all green in color. And as you can see, whatever most viewed articles that comes here. And from your customer's perspective, you can actually see all this on the left side. You have a content taxonomy, it's great, and you have March, and you have your release notes. And having said that, if I want to go and search, which I talked about the information discovery, let me type in the newly released article. I type feature explorer. So there you go. So this is in my release notes. Now it actually highlighted. So this is the power of information discovery. Use your search engine to bring in the relevant content for your customers. Before I leave, there is also a need for analytics. You can actually need a lot of performance metrics in terms of how many likes, dislikes you have. Based on that, you can actually act on it. You also need a bit of feedback. What kind of feedback that your customers actually left on the site, so you can actually go and improvise the content and things like that. And more importantly, you also need to integrate with your existing ticketing system or any kind of internal business applications you have, like your Freshdesk, Zendesk. I'm pretty sure a lot of you might be using Salesforce and things like that. Okay, and most importantly, the internal collaboration tools and your automation tools. Very important for you to do. Let me go back to my PowerPoint slide. Great. So I've shown you a bit of an example of creating a knowledge base suitable for your product documentation. As said, in this kind of a use case where you obviously want is to shift your customer mindset, because a lot of those days when we were millennials, we used to open up the phone and then we are on that customer call, and then we have to wait for a lot of time, and then before we get to a customer agent, and then they'll actually serve you. Okay, but these days your customers are digital savvy. Okay, and then they want to diagnose the problem by themselves. The only way to do that is to provide an excellent knowledge base where they can actually come and self-serve. And if you look at it, self-serving behavior is something you need to cultivating your customers, because in the long time, as your company grows, as your product grows, your services actually grows, you definitely cannot provide a good quality of services with your traditional customer service phone support. You definitely need a knowledge base to support that. Okay, and it's also very important you deflect the tickets using your internal knowledge base. So those are the use cases we see in terms of using a knowledge base for documenting your product. All right, let me talk about a few benefits of having a good knowledge base. As I said, self-service, digital savvy customers love knowledge base because they want to come and self-serve by themselves without waiting for a customer support agent to turn up their phone call. And self-service customer support is a viable model for many SaaS companies these days, because it's easy for them to actually scale their business. Customer satisfaction and engagement is amazing with your knowledge base, because you provide the same red carpet kind of a service to all your customers. Okay, which is very, very crucial. And obviously, if you have a good knowledge base, you can actually propel innovation in your organization, because these days most of the companies, they don't silo the information only for research and development department. You need to democratize that information, democratize that knowledge base, your corporate knowledge that will propel your innovation. And as said earlier, your knowledge base actually is an organizational asset. So invest some money in actually turning your organizational knowledge into an asset because it holds institutional memory. So success factors, great. Now you actually produced a good kind of a knowledge base. How would you measure success? I mean, in terms of putting some kind of a metrics, it's easy to, or it's very tempting to actually say, my success metrics is I have to publish 100 kind of an articles into this knowledge base. Probably that's an output metric. What you really need is to have some kind of a metric that is outcome focused. What's your customer satisfaction on this knowledge base? Actually, as your knowledge base actually help them to solve the problems they have. So that's very important from the customer angle. And more importantly, are they actually satisfied with your knowledge base? Has it actually met their needs? So you probably might run surveys, or it could be some kind of a quantitative kind of a metric that you derive from some of the analytics tool at your disposal. So those are your metrics for your customers. But what about the internal kind of a metrics? You might be interested in terms of content quality, your workflow metrics, your discovery metrics, and most importantly, your cost saving metrics. How much customer support ticket have I deflected using my internal knowledge base or an external knowledge base? Excellent way of actually measuring success. In terms of some of the best practices, keeping in mind I only have few 15 minutes left in the webinar. So the best practice, this is for the technical writers, produce typo-free content, and it is technically accurate content, very essential for your knowledge base to succeed, because every word you write is actually trying to bring trust into your organization. Structure your content for your intuitive navigation. More importantly, structure your content from the customer perspective. Use right set of tools for authoring and publishing content. And this tool is very essentially for, this tool should provide you a freedom to do all your activities around that knowledge base life cycle. And more importantly, use analytics to improve your content quality. Very important as well. And make sure you have your success metrics based on outcomes, not on outputs. The other aspect is have a good documentation workflow, because it's very important to ensure that when you produce content, the workflows have to be managed to ensure good quality. And based on your organization, you can also set up this optimally as well. So once you have your workflow, you try to optimize your workflow by using some process modeling and process engineering. But once your process is super matured, what you really want to do is you need to prepare the checklist so that you actually cut down the number of revisions happening in each kind of a stage. That's the next stage you want to do to optimize your process. All right. For working on creating a good knowledge base, you need to work across your kind of company, like amongst all the stakeholders, depending upon your content strategy. Especially for your product documentation, you need to work with product engineering, customer support, sales, and your customer kind of a retention team and things like that. The other aspect, the main best practice you have to follow is you need to respond to your customer feedback very quickly, because these DNA age where you have technical savvy customers, it's very important to respond to them quickly, because that's where your customers perceive you keenly, that you're actually listening to them. That's pretty much I have for you today, and I will hand over to Kunal.
Thank you so much to all the participants for patiently being with us and listening to what Silva spoke. And I hope you really found this useful, having you again with us for another webinar sometime next month. Thank you again. Have a good day. Bye-bye.